This time on Film Ranker, we are looking at the Walt Disney Animated Studios films of the 70s and 80s. This was a period of change for Disney. A couple of former employees left to create hugely successful competing studios, while Disney's own films were a mixed bag to say the least. But there was some experimentation, a few all-time classics, and the seeds of what would become the studio's renaissance. So let's take a look and count them down. Number 9, The Fox and the Hound. Don't get me wrong, The Fox and the Hound is fine, but it is kind of Disney at its most vanilla. The story's ultra simple, taking any of the bite out of the book. The music will only appeal to the very youngest of viewers, and the animation's so safe that a bunch of the artists, including Don Bluth, left mid-production. The one thing that sets it apart is Kurt Russell, who adds to anything that he's in. Number 8, The Rescuers. The big bads in Disney movies tend to live in the fantastical worlds of magic or genius, nefarious schemes. That's not so in The Rescuers. Here, Disney takes on fairly simple kidnappers, which feels a bit too real and kinda scary for kids. The whole thing gets a bit of a bump from the voice talents of the phenomenal Bob Newhart, and the idea of a network of mice that save children is lovely, but it all feels a bit bleak and comes off like more of an after-school special than it might like. Number 7, The Aristocats. Aristocats is kind of the eccentric highbrow version of 101 Dalmatians. There are references galore to the Parisian art scene, and we're meant to root for a crazy old lady that wants to give all of her riches to her cats. Despite it aiming a bit highbrow, there's still a charm that mostly comes in the form of Tomcat Thomas O'Malley, played by Phil Harris, who also voiced Disney fan faves Baloo and Little John. It isn't exactly memorable or particularly original, but it has enough moments and enough charm to make it worthwhile. Number 6, Oliver and Company. This is a surprisingly solid Dickens adaptation. Yes, it is Disney-fied, and that Billy Joel song is a repetitive, easy-listening nightmare, but there is some actual substance under all of that. The heart of the original story is still here, and the voice leads, including Joel, do good work. It's one of Disney's more off-the-beaten-path films, and one that has kind of become a cult favorite. Number 5, The Black Cauldron. Speaking of off the beaten path, The Black Cauldron does not feel at all like a Disney movie. Even if they chopped out some of the really dark stuff, it's still Disney's darkest film by a good deal, featuring a necromancer and an actual army of the undead. It was famously interfered with by producers and ended up as a very expensive movie that none of the creators were really happy with, but it's an interesting experiment from the studio, and if you don't bring in any expectations from the books, it's kind of a fun, dark adventure. Number 4, The Great Mouse Detective. One of Disney's most underrated films, The Great Mouse Detective is a smart look at Sherlock Holmes, and it has some real adventure, a few smart laughs, and some nods to the original material that make it a surprisingly fun watch for adult viewers. All of that is helped by a terrific climax and one of the best villains in the Disney canon. This is one that is well worth dusting off and watching again. Number 3, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is like a warm blanket on a blustery day. There's a reason these stories stay with us, and a reason that this movie is just as wonderful now as it was when you were 6. Every single one of the characters pops off the screen. They're all so fully formed and recognizable. The humor is timeless and honestly funny. It's short and gentle and silly, but in a way that never gets old. I can't name any other film that panders this much to kids but resonates this well with adults. Number 2, The Little Mermaid. This is the movie that kicked off the Disney Renaissance and set the tone for all that was to come in the 90s. Little Mermaid gets the formula just right. It retells a classic story, adds a bit of a contemporary twist, has a killer villain, a literal fish-out-of-water lead, a bunch of cute companions, and a likable love interest, and then adds an all-time classic soundtrack. This was a breath of fresh air and a game changer for Disney. Number 1. Robin Hood. Disney's Robin Hood is the example of how you honor a beloved classic while bringing something new, and a big part of that something is turning the folks in Sherwood Forest into animals. Once you see Robin Hood as a fox, it is hard to imagine him any other way. The same goes for Cowardly Lion Prince John, the heartless wolf sheriff, and Little John is a bear that is basically blue in another color. Robin Hood was my favorite story growing up, and this was my favorite telling. It has so many touching and legitimately thrilling scenes. Songs are all hummable classics, and the lead is iconically charming. It's still one of the best things Disney has ever done. And that is it for me. That top 4 is a huge cut above the rest, but I'd love to hear what you all think. Please list your faves and don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you all next time.